Good morning. For the record, I'm John Foote. I'm the lame duck DA here in the county. And this is my last budget presentation to you. So
yeah. How many years, John?
I'm finishing, well, 20 in a row, and then I had about a year and a half before. So it's been a good run for me. So having said that, good morning. Still morning, I think. Let me just get right into it. Slide 2. Our budget is about a little over 15 million, and about 76% of it is general fund. We have a little under 83 employees. As you can see, we're mostly personnel, probably one of the highest in the county. We're in the people business. If you look at the breakout between revenues, generally speaking, we have 3 operational parts of our office: family support, which says child support, victim assistance, which provides services to crime victims, and then criminal prosecution. And generally speaking, family support is funded primarily through federal money channeled through the Oregon Department of Justice, and about 2/3. And then our victim assistance is now predominantly funded by VOCA and VAWA grants through the federal government. And then our criminal prosecution is almost exclusively county funded. So that's kind of how we break down. Slide 3. I'll wait for questions on this. I will tell you that I always kind of look at the long history. We tried to be, since I've been here, a responsible partner with the county. I really do believe in Gary's emphasis now about we're all one team, and that when we make decisions, it impacts everybody else. And for many years, we reduced our staff a lot as we tried to transfer a lot of work to electronic case manager system, which we've largely done now. We're not done with the personnel side yet, but and today, even though we have fewer employees today than we had in 2008, just to give you some perspective on that. We recognize that when we do things, and somebody asked about sustainable, to me, the real problem is that the property tax limit does not match the cost of employees each year. So, I mean, you don't have to be around very long to see that. So we all share the problem. And so we all need to be really responsible about that. Slide 4. Again, if you have questions about it, I will tell you the victim assistance is a little bit misleading, because one of our grants, we pay it out of general fund, and then it's reimbursed by VOCA or VAWA, I can't remember which. On family support, it says our general fund support is 87,000, but in truth, it's over 400,000, which again is about 1/3 of our cost for family support. A problem that I just discovered, just to let you know, is, we got notice about the state cuts kind of across the board, even unless they have a special session. And then we got specific word from the Oregon Department of Justice. They have their own Department of Child Support. And they told us that we have over $800,000 in state money. And I was shocked by that, because we don't. That money is federal money. And I'm very concerned that there might be some effort within the Department of Justice Family Support Office to take some of that federal money and apply it to their problem, and then make the money for us state money. We're trying to figure out if that's true, but that would be a new threat to us if that happened. So we don't have any answers yet. It's hard to always get answers now when people, in COVID. But I just wanted to alert you to that. Slide 5. I think our accomplishments are stated there. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have about them. But I did want to talk about what I would call threats. And I'm looking at this now over the kind of spectrum of 40 years in public service, which is how long I've been doing this, over 40 years. And I started working in the 80s as a prosecutor in Portland. And I know what that was like. I worked from 1980 to 1990 there. and we had terrible crime rates, really high. And no one had any idea about how to control them. And the result was that the case counts for DA's offices became enormous and crushing for us and the courts. And over the last 30 years, there have been enormous drops in crime rates, over 50% for violent crime till recently. And the result has been our case management, our caseloads have been much more manageable. But we're now seeing a spike in crime again. It went up 12% in the county last year. And that has two effects, obviously the victimization, but also workload. Everyone's sort of gotten used to the fact that our workload's been pretty steady, but we're seeing our intake go up. I think it went up 17% a year or two ago. So that's one threat. And then another is we're being asked more and more to staff treatment courts, alternative courts in the courthouse with no additional staffing. And we've always said, okay, we'll cover them. It's a court appearance. But we have 20 now. And it's just not sustainable. And I know this is hard to hear, but since this all started about we have all these alternative programs, recidivism has been going up. It's higher today than when justice reinvestment started. It's higher today than when the state mandated evidence-based practices. And that just puts a workload on the system as well as a threat to the public. So another is juvenile measure 11. As you know, the legislature just repealed it, and they've converted these hearings now into an enormous workload for us and an enormous drain on victims. And that's only going to increase over time. That's another one. And then the final one is the courts have ruled that unanimous juries are required now in felonies. And if you don't understand, in misdemeanors in Oregon, it's always been unanimous, 6 jurors. And for murder, it's always been unanimous. But for other felonies, it's been 10-2 guilty or 10-2 not guilty is a verdict. And there are now potentially even thousands of cases in the system. They're going to come back for a new trial. We've already received like 5 or 10. And that's just the very, very first wave. Our number is much smaller than the other big counties proportionally, which is interesting, but that's going to have a greater and greater impact on our office and a greater and greater impact on crime victims who have to go back and relive this again. This is all in our fun narrative if you want to look at it. The unanimous jury thing is largely misunderstood. And I'd be glad to answer any questions about that. Slide 6. That's self-explanatory. I'd be glad to answer any questions. Slide 7. Or is there one? Okay, that's the only slide. I have some other pages, but so I think I'm on schedule, Wilda.
You are. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, John. Okay, Brenda, looks like we have at the moment one query, 2. We have 2. So starting, you want to just go ahead, Brenda, and take that over?
Certainly. Commissioner Savis. You're on mute, Commissioner.
But congratulations on your retirement, I suppose, right?
Yes.
Yes. A couple questions. How many new hires have you made in the last 12 months?
Well, Brandy's on the line. We've hired, I think, 1 deputy DA, and I think recently we hired 4 people, didn't we, in staff? Brandy, is Brandy on the line?
Yeah, I'm here.
Isn't it 4, or have we hired more than that?
We have hired 4.
We'll have to check on those numbers, but I think those are right.
Okay. So in your general fund expenditures or dollars, what percentage of cuts have you made that are ongoing?
Well, it's on there. we've cut that one vacant manager position. And we cut materials and services. Actually, we made 2 cuts to materials and services. One to balance the budget in February, and then another now, and those are ongoing. And I'm trying to remember. I think it added up to about a little over 3%.
Okay, because I'm looking at page 3 of your summary,
Okay.
and I don't see that per se. Maybe Brandy can point that out. As far as the general fund support line is not lower.
No, it's not.
Because we didn't, let's see. We did not have a cut this last fiscal year in general fund
Okay, that answers that question.
in totality. Yeah. And then
We
to
had some,
answer-
Paul, could I answer? We had, I don't know if you remember this, but one of the other things that the legislature gave us was recording grand juries.
There it is.
And which again is one of the, I mean, in a way I don't mind, but anyway. And that has resulted in an enormous workload for us with no money from the state, none. They gave some money to the courts, but truthfully, grand jury is a court function, not ours. So they wouldn't shoulder any of that. So it wasn't a very fine moment, in my opinion, for our partners. But the result is now we have to produce transcripts of all these grand juries when we do discovery. If you know what discovery is, when we file a case, we have to give everything we have to the defense, which we agree with. So we have always done that. But now we have all this grand jury stuff. And we were getting more and more electronic discovery as it was. I'm going back over this, but just to remind everyone, we were getting more and more electronic discovery from law enforcement and body cams, and that's only going to grow. And our ability to manage the discovery process was breaking down. We just didn't have the resources anymore. So we began looking into it, and you gave us some money for that. In addition, we're now going to change to go to the cloud, which we have put out an RFP and intend to do in the next year. And that is going to allow us to manage this workload even better. So that was an initiative that the board and the budget committee funded us for last year that we are, quite frankly, in the middle of. And if we don't do it, we could get in all sorts of trouble with the courts and the defense bar. Our lawyers could get bar complaints against us because we can't fail to give discovery. So that's a synopsis of that.
Okay.
Brandon, do you want to add anything? Okay.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry I interrupted. I thought you were finished. My last question, you mentioned earlier on in your presentation about recidivism, and you've seen that going up. And my question is, I know it's not in your department, but have you seen any positive impacts of the transition center that we opened in the sheriff's department?
No. And I can't remember who was on the board. I think Jim was and Martha was, and actually Tootie was. But the original idea of the transition center was a day reporting center. And I opposed it because the randomized controlled trials show they don't reduce crime. And it got funded under a different name, and I stepped away from it. But I continued to track one number, and that is a number that comes out in the jail report every month, which is recidivism of male and female people in the jail who get released. And their measurement is a little different. It's whether they come back to the jail within a year. Now, it could be a lot of things. It could be a probation violation. It could be a lot of things. But, and I've tracked that since the transition center opened. And it hasn't moved an inch, really. I mean, it kind of goes up and down, but it's been a flat line. And the other thing is that recidivism in the county and in the state has been climbing. So I think we ought to be talking more about two things in the future: crime and recidivism. They're workload issues and they're safety issues. And I'm not saying I have a magic formula for recidivism, but I think we should not be not reporting on it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your response. It's been a question I've been asking for a couple of years, and the question has been, how do we right size our public safety system, which is really the sheriff, the jail, the court system. I mean, all of it combined. And trying to, in effort to figure out where the bottlenecks are to keep our society and our county as safe as possible. I think that's our goal. That's one of our responsibilities. So that's a long conversation for a different day, but I just want to put it out there that, I'm hoping we can figure out where those bottlenecks are and how we make our society and our county safer. So thank you for your community service in the last 20 some odd years, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul. It's been a good ride, and I've enjoyed working with all of you, and we have a great team, and I'm really excited about John's future. We're one of the few places in the state where actually we made a smooth transition to a very competent person. Everything else is blowing up. Look out for Multnomah County. You want to talk about crime? It spills out here. So, it's a hard time to talk about crime and recidivism because it's not politically correct. But I think in terms of the public, it's the bottom line. So I'll stop.
I look at it from a budgetary standpoint. I understand that other political element, but I think that when we're trying to, in tight times, I think we have to look at it from the financial standpoint. And that's what we're here today all about. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Humberston?
Thank you. John, thank you for bringing up the grand jury recordation, because I think that's something we're going to have to address at the state level and aggressively say, hey, you're putting a demand on the district attorneys in this state, and you need to fund that demand. Obviously, it's not happening at the moment, but I think it should be one of our priorities going forward. Because this is your swan song, as the saying goes, I just wanted to read for the public that's listening into this, some of the accomplishments that have occurred under your watch, because I think people should know what you were able to do during the course of your service to the county. The Clackamas County Human Trafficking Multidisciplinary Task Force is a professional group of human trafficking investigators, prosecutors, advocates, and service providers who share an interagency commitment to protecting men, women, and children from labor and sexual exploitation. In 2019, the Clackamas County Human Traffic Organization identified 138 victims of trafficking and provided servicing to those individuals through advocates in the DA's office, nonprofit organizations, including Safety Compass, Village for One, Clackamas Women's Services, and the county's Juvenile Department, Department of Human Services, and Department of Behavioral Health. They also referred victims to Clackamas County's Community Court program as Safe Place. And you had 29 volunteer advocates that continue to provide support to victims of crime in Clackamas County, and that's just 2019. John, we may disagree on the definition of recidivism and how we calculate that, and I'll be happy to discuss that in the future with you. All that being said, your service in this county has been extraordinary, and moving to digital as fast as you did has obviously been great on the money saving side of things. So it's greatly appreciated. Look forward to a lunch with you in the future.
Thank you, Ken. Well, I just have to say all of this is because of the people in our office, not because of me. And that's really the bottom line. You have to build a really strong group of people and keep replenishing it. And a lot of the fileless work was led by Brandy, and she deserves a ton of credit for it. She converted a lot of lawyers who didn't want to hear anything about it in the beginning. And when COVID hit, it's actually the transition out of COVID is made harder for us than the transition into it, because we all had laptops and we had electronic files, so people could work from home and do their work. And that's what we did. And that's a tribute to Brandy and her team, and then everybody together. It's very collaborative, but I do worry about what's going to happen when things open up. I think there's a crime explosion coming, but we'll see. But John Wentworth will tell you, we've already seen it in domestic violence quite a bit. So
yeah, We saw those numbers were up.
I think it's probably connected to the explosion in marijuana and liquor sales too.
Ms. Coldwell?
Thank you. My question was also about the recidivism rates, and I'm sorry to hear that you don't have the magic formula. That was going to be my first question. It seems like there are some changes in the budget that are impacting or could impact recidivism. I don't know if you know more about why it's increasing, but I'm of a mind to make sure that we aren't undoing what we know works to reduce recidivism. I know that's probably an art as much as a science, ever changing, but what are your thoughts about how to approach rescaling the criminal justice system budget at Clackamas County that will help recidivism rates and not unduly impact them?
Thank you for that question. It's a long one, and I have a lot of thoughts about it. I've written about it over the years. I think there's too much stock put in people saying they know how to fix recidivism. And it's very difficult. I mean, and this is stuff I've said before, but changing human behavior is very hard. All we have to do is look at ourselves, right? Quitting smoking was one of the hardest things I ever did. I quit a bunch before I quit. And so you're dealing with entrenched criminal behavior. I'm not talking about people who do something and aren't coming back, but entrenched, that's really hard to change. But we've been sold something that there are people who know how to do it. The problem is, it's hard to do. And I don't think we're nearly rigorous enough about evaluating the programs that are being used. And I'll tell you the truth, the treatment courts don't have a great record of changing criminal behavior. And that has a lot to do with how you measure it. Do you measure just the people who fail, or do you measure the people who enter? I mean, and I think you need to be rigorous about it. I think you need to be scientific about it. And I think we need to get a barometer on that first. The second thing I tell you is I think that we have just, the rush to de-incarcerate, as altruistic as it sounds, is directly impacting recidivism. For no other reason that when somebody's incarcerated, they aren't hurting somebody. And now, the question is, what's the balance? I think I have a paper I wrote, it's on our website, Criminal Justice System, a Continuing Success Story. I wrote it back in 2018 and then 16 because I thought people were losing track of the narrative. I've got this long narrative going back 40 years. I know where we've come from. And it feels like we're just recreating it again. And, you know, that drives you nuts when you see the same mistake being repeated. A lot of this is at the state level, not at the county level. These big pieces are being moved at the state level. We've got good partners here. And I think we all talk to each other well, and I think there are going to be more and more opportunities to do that in the future, and I encourage that. But I think we have to have an honest conversation about when somebody says they know how to reduce recidivism, what's their evidence? How rigorous is it? How scientific is it? And then is it targeting the group that they say it works with? That's the approach I took with the Transition Center back in 2013. I went and found the randomized controlled trial study that said it didn't reduce crime. And that's turned out to be true. The state stopped funding it after 2 years because there wasn't any data to support it. So those are hard things, but I think if we're going to be smart about the money, we need to come to terms with some of this and strike the right balance. And it has to happen at the state and the county. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bernard?
Well, again, John, thank you very much for your service. I appreciate working with you all these years, and you've done a great job. To address recidivism, you know, I don't necessarily agree with John either, but that's okay. However, our jails are our mental health facilities. You know, really, those people need mental health services. And if we could ever do that, we could reduce a lot of the folks that go to jail, and also probably recidivism, if we could do that, but we're not. So hopefully this measure that Metro passed, that I don't live in Metro, so I don't have to pay, will provide the services we need to keep those people out of jail. And I think that's the key. As far as the others, you know, we got a lot of work to do. So again, thanks. And John, congratulations. And Brandy, thanks for doing such a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could add on the mental health part, I think the thing that's missing is some way to intervene with somebody who's exhibiting kind of decompensating from mental illness. There's no ability to intervene, really none, unless the person chooses to. And you know, that isn't usually happen. So what is, everyone sits around waiting for the person to commit a crime, because that's the only time you can intervene.
I know.
And then we complain to the jails about they got all the mentally ill. We need a short-term intervention tool, and it's very politically hard to do, where we can just say, come with us, we're going to get you, this is what we do in mental health court. We're going to get you stabilized on your medications. We're going to get you a place to live. We're going to help you look for a job. If you go to mental health court, that's what we'll see. Well, we need that before crimes committed. But it's so politically difficult to do it. But that would be my other, and again, that's got to happen at the state. But I just wish we had more common sense. And can I just say how much I've enjoyed all of you, and I'll enjoy you until I ride off on my pony. I'm going to do everything I can to help John between now and when he hits the saddle. And we've got a lot of work to do here when we reopen up. And I just want to put a shout out to Chris Owen, who's not on this call, but Chris has been just working the guy looks exhausted. And he's doing a grand jury now on an officer-involved shooting that was, if you knew it, he pointed a shotgun at the police after firing it in his home. But the family's very angry at the police. So he's doing that today. That's very draining. And Chris has been I think we'd all agree, Chris has been the backbone of this period of time. And I just want to give him a special shout out. We have so many good people. They're the most important decisions you make, especially in a business like ours, where you need good judgment. The most important things you do are the people you hire and the people you promote. And the longer you're in office, the more that really matters. And I've been very lucky in all those respects. And I feel very fortunate.
Oops.
Where'd you go? Well, we know he had good words to say. Yeah. In case he doesn't come back. So John Wentworth, would you tell him that we all agree, he's done a great job over the years, and certainly congratulations to you, and, looking forward to working with you both in these kind of things and places like Parrot Creek and, some of the other things that I know you're involved with. So thank you. And thank you to the staff of the DA's office that was with us today.